Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Instructor podcast, where every week we're joined by experts and innovators, leaders and game changers, so we can hold a mirror up at the instructor industry and see where we can improve and raise our standards. So if you're ready, we'll make a start. Thank you again for joining us today on the Instructor podcast. If you're enjoying these podcasts, make sure you hit subscribe or follow so they'll go direct into your feed every Sunday. Today, in this episode, we are joined by the wonderful Chris Bensted. Now, in this episode, we have quite a long, varying chat covering a whole host of topics around the industry, but the main protocol was to talk about the DITC, the Driver Instructor Training Collective. And Chris goes into quite a lot of detail about that, about what benefits he provided. And there's some awesome benefits from that, by the way. And also talks about what his long-term goals for it and what the goals are short-term as well. And he shares his quite forthright views on the industry. So we'll hope you enjoy this one and we'll make a start. So today we are joined by the wonderful and lovely Chris Bensted. How are you today, Chris?
I'm good, thank you, especially after a wonderful and lovely. That's even better.
I make a point of choosing them specific for the person. I am glad that you're well. What I'd like to do is ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself rather than me introduce you. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your background and about what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. I'm just a driving instructor, which is what I always start with when people ask what I do, because it's a list. But I'm a driving instructor who's managed to be in the right place at the right time throughout. So I started the first Facebook group for driving instructors. I'm an ADI, PDI, and I'm on Facebook. I then went from doing that to being able to go on Sky News and talk for instructors when learners were being allowed on motorways, and that was brilliant. And I got there because I said yes. 10 other instructors have said no. And then, there's other opportunities along the way. And I've made a good habit of being in the right place at the right time. But I started being an instructor 13 years ago, and I've done the national franchise. I've been independent, and I now run Better Driver Training. We've got a growing number of instructors. I think we've got 7 at the moment, with a couple of PDIs coming through. Depends where in the process everybody is. But yeah, so that's going really well. I'm now not on the road. I'm doing theory training one-to-one on Zoom. So I'm spending my life looking at a Zoom screen, and that's awesome. Hugely under-supported in the industry, and I'm doing that for other instructors. So we're doing it under Theory Test Explained, and other instructors are sending me pupils that need a bit of help, particularly those with dyslexia, autism, memory issues, because that's one of my specialist subjects, helping people remember stuff. And yeah, so working through those things, and then out of the ashes of the of COVID and national lockdowns, we launched the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, which is a platform for driving instructors in an industry where we're all isolated, as we know, and we lockdown proved that even more, but can really come together. But we've never really had those platforms to come together on. We've always kind of been floating around somewhere and ad hoc little groups or satellites, and there's not been a strong platform. We've always looked towards the DVSA to provide that, wrongly, and they drew a real line in the sand and said, we regulate, we make sure you meet the minimum standard, we provide the minimum standard. I've never met an instructor who wants to be providing minimum standard. There's some that struggle to fight the other challenges that we have, and some that haven't found the path yet. But they all want to do their best. So why are we looking downwards? So that's the DITC in a nutshell is going to be, it's changing rapidly, but it's going to be a platform, a communication hub for instructors to find stuff, useful stuff, and to hopefully bring people together. I am, thanks to Neil Peake from ADI and JC, we had a chat at the beginning of the first lockdown, group of the NJC and myself, and he said, would you call yourself a middleman? And I said, that's exactly it. I have always been. I've been the person who goes, oh, you're doing that and you're doing that, you should talk.
Yeah.
And I see the DITC being the middleman for the industry, or woman. I'm non-gender specific when it comes to the DITC, but yeah.
I mean, the DITC is sort of the big thing I brought you on to speak about today, but there's also a lot of meat to pick the bones, to pick off the bones there. But before I even get into all that, I like to ask everyone to think back to their driving test. This is something that I'm always interested in. Looking back at your driving test and when you learned to drive those many, many moons ago, what are your thoughts then? As in, how do you recollect your lessons? How did you handle your test? And sort of how is it different now?
I love that. I think I always try to reflect back. I was talking to a PDI yesterday, and she sort of said, well, my lessons were like this. I didn't really get on with the instructor. He shouted at me lots, but I got there. And you think, it shouldn't have been like that.
Yeah.
But people do. And, that's what I don't want to be. So I often reflect back. I was actually lucky. It was a friend of the family, my brother's godmother, who was a qualified instructor, really good reputation. And she was one of those people that was able to shout in a good way. She'd have a pop at you, but not really mean it. It was attitude. It was bants, as we would say nowadays. But then we didn't know what that was. I'm not a good driver, and I say that now. I've learnt to be a good driver. When I started doing my training to become an instructor, my trainer said, why do you want to be an instructor? And I said, because I'm good with people. I don't particularly like people, but I'm good with people. I came from retail, that breaks it out of you. And I like systems. I like making stuff simple, breaking it down into bits. So I thought I'd be good at it. And he looked at me as if I'd said something wrong. And I thought, oops, maybe it's not the job for me. He said, everyone always says, either I like driving or I'm good at driving. And I went, no, I'm rubbish. Good luck. So, and that's, from the very beginning. So doing my L test, it took me a little while, not a huge amount of time. I managed to sprain my ankle hanging off a balcony halfway through. So that delayed things. I kind of got it, but I was never good. But got to my test, sailed through, wasn't a problem because I got on really well with the examiner. He was really chatty, and they were notorious. The two local examiners, I got the nicer one of the two, but they was both, notorious for their attitude. And we were just chatting about his son and the fact he was an ex boxer. And within a couple of minutes, I kind of went, yeah, I feel relaxed. And I think what I learned from that was because I'd taken a bit longer, having sprained my ankle, lots of private practice. I was a driver taking that L test. I wasn't someone who was hoping to pass. I'd done that because it had been forced upon me. I wasn't able to have lessons for a bit and that sort of thing. And I think that's what I've carried forwards, is that you need to be relaxed to be good enough. And if you can make it about real life, that's, I got that from my driving. It was never about the test, because I was out driving with my dad doing practice because I wasn't able to have lessons at one point. So yeah, I think that's the stuff that I when I reflect back, I don't know if I realised it then,
yeah,
but I felt very relaxed with the driving. And then I got a Ford Escort. So, I didn't fit the stereotype, but the car was cool.
It's some some interesting points there, actually. I'm going to just tell a little story, actually, because when you're talking there about being relaxed with the examiner, I do think that makes a significant difference. I mean, that shouldn't be why you pass or fail a test. No one can ever use that as a reason, but I do think it makes a difference. And I think back to I took the old style part 3 to become an instructor, and I failed the first attempt and passed second. First attempt, nothing wrong with the examiner. I don't blame the examiner. She was pleasant, but I never felt comfortable. The second one put me at ease straight away. Right from walking out the door with her, she never once spoke about the test till we got in the car. And I felt completely easy, and I blitzed it. And I think that's a really good thing. But just when you're talking about your test as well, you said getting on with the examiner. I'm going to do a podcast one day about my experience at passing the driving test, because I was atrocious. And I didn't get on with the examiners. And I always did stupid stuff. Like one of them, I got in the wrong car, which you wouldn't expect to do on your driving test. But I remember I was learning in a black Ford Fiesta, and it just had L plates on. And when I come out of test centre, they were parked on main road, and there were two next to each other. And I'm like, I don't know which is which. But I know. I'll press the button. Whichever one opens, that's mine. So I pressed it. First one flashed. I got in, and I'm like cramped up behind the steering wheel. I think something's not right here. And the examiner opened the other door and went, I think you're in the wrong car. Yeah, I think I might be. Then I remember when I got in the correct car, and I said to the examiner, what did I say to her? I said, jokingly, I went, is there any point in me taking my test now? And they went, just drive. I thought, well, yeah, okay. And I failed that one, oddly enough.
I think it's really important, and we both said it, and it's not about the examiner. It's not about fault. It's not saying it's to do with them. But if you can feel relaxed, that shows that you feel confident in a way. It's a test, but you feel confident. I did my minibus test. The examiner came out relatively recently. I was an ADI. And the examiner came out and said, Christopher? And I said, yes, but can you call me Chris? Otherwise it means I'm in trouble. And at that moment, the whole world froze. I looked at my trainer, he looked at me, and we just kind of went, oops. She didn't appreciate it. I think I probably should have known better, but I was just being relaxed and me. And that atmosphere didn't help me. And it's just about how you feel. I'm a big one for desensitizing the test center, so that it's not all about that. It's one of the things that I have thrown back at me on a regular basis is I did a talk about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah.
I was lots of stuff that I was talking about, and then it was one of those throwaway questions where someone said, how do you use words to get a subconscious message across? And I said, one of the things I do is when I'm going past the test center, I say, we're just going to go past the test, PASS, the test.
Okay.
And you can pause. You can make it sound like anyone should have heard it but didn't. Past the test center, and I swear that kind of helps you feel. People get this positive association. Whether it does or not, I don't care, because it works. I feel more relaxed. I kind of find it funny, so I'm laughing to myself that I've got this one past them, and I think it helps. And that's the one that people always quote back to me and go, I've been using that ever since you said it. And that was, it must be 8, 9, 10 years ago. And it's things like that if you've got this positive association, if you've got instructors that can make their pupils feel relaxed, I figured out you don't play the Imperial March from Star Wars when the examiner walks in the room. I thought it was funny.
I'm guessing the examiner didn't.
We were just having a laugh about the fact that they should all have their theme tune when they walk in. And what would their theme tune be? And I pushed the button just as the door opened. We had a laugh about it. It was fine, and I seem to remember they did pass. but I got one of those, don't push your luck looks, but they're quite common. I'm used to that.
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I'd never considered using the word. I mean, I think part of it is my accent. I probably can't differentiate between past and past. I probably can't.
We prefer the A's down this way, don't we? It's a harder A. It's the grass.
But I mean, I think the other key thing is, like you said there, it's the putting them at ease and the familiarising them with the test center or around the idea of a test. But I'd love to just get your opinion on the word failure for a second, because I'm always sort of split into ways, and for me, I think it depends on the student. Because if I've got someone that's really anxious about that, I'll tend to use the word failure more, just to take the edge off it, so that take away not negative connotations. But I don't know. I think I get some people. I think I'm not going to say that word because I think that's going to have more of a harsh impact. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I like that. I qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm not quite sure what that title really means because I've never really done it, and then realised putting people in a trance in the car wasn't a good idea. But during that, I discovered NLP. So pre-NLP, I would have said I wasn't good with failure, but I did it quite a lot. I didn't achieve I didn't manage to reach the stars with what I was trying to do. I was all right. I got by, jack of all trades kind of thing. I was good at stuff, but I didn't find anything I excelled at. So therefore, I probably failed at everything because I didn't get there. NLP, one of the presuppositions is that there is no failure, only feedback. So you're on a driving lesson and you think, we'll have a go at this technique and it doesn't work, that you haven't failed at that technique. You've just figured out something that doesn't work. It's whether he said it or not, it's the Edison quote of, we found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Questionable, but that approach of going, actually, there isn't failure. You don't fail, you learn. You pick yourself up and you go, well, I won't do that again. Or you go, that didn't work, but maybe this will. Or, I was listening to yourself talking to Bob Morton, and Bob saying it's that positive approach for going, what happened there? How did that make you feel about it? Which is a phrase I hate because it makes everyone boo coaching. But it is the first response to everything is emotional. Even when I've had issues with my knee for a while, walking in the room just now, it cracked. It didn't hurt, but I said ow and I felt pain because I knew that the noise meant it could hurt. So my first response wasn't anything actually physical, it was an emotional response. And you then work from that point. So how did you feel, except for when I taught someone who I think is probably psychopathic, genuinely psychopathic, who we were reversing around a corner, and I said, how do you feel about that? And she looked at me and went, what do you mean emotionally? I genuinely, she was fascinating. I loved teaching her, it was great, but no, we didn't do feelings.
I'm interrupting you because I've got to say, when you said that, I pictured Hannibal Lecter when you said that.
A very attractive version of Hannibal Lecter, then yes,
fair
possibly. She was absolutely lovely, but there was that cold stare. Yes, she had that dead, off pat, no problem at all. I think when I discovered that, actually look for what you've achieved from not achieving it, not succeeding to the point of, and we all say it. How many people failed their test for one thing, but that one thing was 99% of the test? They ignore the other 30 whatever minutes that they drove beautifully.
Yeah.
you know, why do we have this imbalance? Our brain's designed to be negative. I refuse. Some lovely people have said that, they've commented about my positivity. Was one of the things that I do class as a bit of a failure was Positivity Week, which at the time was brilliant. Very big on Facebook. People who weren't on Facebook at the time might not have experienced it, but it was just going, as an industry, we tend to focus on fault. So let's have a week of just being amazingly positive. And then, like all of us, I got busy. And rather than having this time to say, oh, let's all be positive, because I haven't got a full diary, I suddenly had a full diary. I was going, I'm struggling to be positive. I can't be positive for other people. I need to be positive for me. But I think that positive approach is really important. So just to think about what you said about the fact you either use or don't use the word failure, I think what I do is I challenge whether it is a failure.
Yeah.
I don't like words having power, which is really silly, because I think they've got huge power. Actually, I think when we use the right word, we can change so much. But I think we have to decide what that means. I don't think the word test. Why you can call it something else if you want, and it is an assessment because of how it works. But you know what? Let's just make it that it's the same as testing you brushing your teeth. Something you do every day.
Yeah.
That it's just a thing. Words do have power, and there's different people that have different takes on them. Definitely.
One of the other things, and again, I'd be fascinated to hear your take on this, is I sort of put the emphasis more on, well, let's go and show the examiner how good you are. Let's go and show them what you can do. And you know what? Even if you do fail, you're going to take a learn from that, because, I think of it this with the example I use a lot as well is, imagine you're on your test, you're reversing back and you're about to hit a lamppost, the examiner says stop. It's better that happens on the test than the day after the test when there's no one to say stop and then you're reversing to the lamppost. I know which scenario I prefer out them two.
I love that phrase, take a learn from that. I think it is, isn't it? It's what can you take away? I think it's always the positive. It's got to be. But there isn't a benefit any other way.
I mean, obviously we spoke there about NLP and about hypnotherapy. And you say you're a trained hypnotherapist?
I did a course in it.
Right.
I'm a big believer in hats. I've never found my hypnotherapist hat. My instructor hat is very comfortable. I have no problem being a driving instructor. I like challenging myself, but as long as I know my stuff, a quote inside of Ian Brett and myself, my business partner and myself, is know your shit, don't show your shit. So you've got to have that foundation. You've got to have that knowledge behind what you're talking about. I don't like talking when I don't know what I'm talking about. I can make it up as I go along, but I want the foundations to be there. So I think that's that's a large part of what I do. And the hypnotherapy, I love it. I recommend it to everybody for everything. Test nerves. If people have got health conditions as well, we don't know how to relax. Hypnosis is based in relaxation, and being able to do amazing things. My son slept through from 2 weeks because I was studying hypnosis at the time, so I was practicing on the other half, and I swear that's why he's just been brilliant. And I used to be able to put him into a trance, getting him to focus on the back of his hand, and you just watch him kind of drift off. But I've never felt like I am a hypnotherapist.
I mean, I find it fascinating because about 2 years ago, unless I'm getting my years mixed up, because I'm not even sure what year we're in now, I think it was 2019, I got a lot of help personally, and I had hypnotherapy. I had someone help me meditation, sort of like my spiritual health and that side of it, and it was just ridiculously beneficial. And I think there's a really flippant view on it when you look from the outside. Again, I'm not trained in anything. I was on the receiving end of it. I think that people are too quick to dismiss it. I think it's for me. Well, I can say it's from my benefit, my perspective. It was a massive benefit to me.
Yeah. If everything is inside your head, it controls everything. Your brain is doing all of these things without you knowing about it. If there's a problem, if you're in a restaurant and there's an issue with your order, you don't necessarily talk to the waiter or to the chef. You go straight to the person in charge because you want to address it. You want to get something sorted. But when we have a problem, emotional problem, which none of us are particularly good at dealing with anyway, it's a state of how the world is now, or a physical problem, why don't you go straight to the top? Go straight to the thing that's in charge and is controlling it, and try and make sure that things are in alignment.
Yeah.
And I am the least. I'm going to change that. I was the least spiritual person you've ever met. I've never been a fan of organized religion, and I kind of, everything was quite scientific as I was growing up. For me, I took that kind of approach. I did the hypnosis, and I ended up referring to myself as being spiritual. I discovered pantheism, which I found fascinating. And if I had to hang my hat on a hook, that would probably be it. Not my hypnotherapy hat, because I haven't got one, but another hat. And I really did come out of it kind of having a much more enlightened view. I lost the anger. I had a nightmare when I was growing up with stress and anger, and actually went to a healer that waved her hands around, which I don't think was anything to do with her waving her hands around and blue light and stuff. It was, she gave me time to lay there, chill out, relax, and she listened to me.
Yeah.
And let me talk. That's what I think. And I might be wrong. She might have had magical powers, and I accept that. I don't poo-poo it. For me, it wasn't that. It was an opportunity to center myself, and that I bring into my training. Of how do people need to understand themselves? How do you understand yourself if you're too busy with the outside world?
I mean, that's fascinating, and I get what you're saying there about centering yourself and being almost at peace with a healer there, because again, probably back around towards the end of 2019, I started meditation. I'm really, really sporadic, never consistent. It was really only this year, over this last lockdown, I got consistent. And I can notice now, if I go a few days without meditating, I start to feel it, almost like a tension. It's odd. It's an odd feeling, but I'm not going to advise anyone to do it or advise anyone how to do it, because I don't know. I'll do what's right for me, but I advise anyone to give it a go. But you said something interesting there as well, just earlier, about wearing a certain hat. And I think I wanted to touch back on something you said right at the beginning when you used the phrase. It perked my attention a little bit, of just an instructor. And I don't know how I feel about that phrase, because it almost sounds derogatory, the word just.
Yes.
Whereas there's nothing wrong with being an instructor 100%. At all. And if that's what you are, then that's brilliant. But to me, you strike me as someone that is much more than that, because of the stuff you do above and beyond, if that makes sense.
But I don't think it is above and beyond. I think what is often, when you come into the job, you're handed a green badge and you're told that you teach learner drivers. The world is so much bigger than that. The opportunities are so much bigger than that. And the people that become instructors, I have, if you want to, and you are happy going out, doing a lesson, teaching a learner, and that's all you want to do, I 100% respect it, support it, and that's awesome. Do it as best you can. That's all I ask of people. So I just want instructors to be a positive role model for their learners and for everything that we stand for. But actually, I've learnt very early on not to assume that the person opposite you isn't an expert in the subject you're talking about. Because you can sit at that test centre, you can have an ex-GP on your right, an ex-lawyer on your left, all wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and then the other instructor that's there might have had a background in rock music, and they're all in that one place with the shared green badge, and that unites us. Possibly pink one, which I always think we devalue that. They have as much to bring to the table. It's not like when you're starting out in something, because we're dealing with life skills, and those people have life skills. So do your pupils equally. But I just think with instructors, we so often assume that we have this lack of knowledge in the industry, when actually what we've got is too much, and it's too broad. Very rarely do you come across a driving instructor who hasn't got a good idea. One of the things that we want to do with the DITC, we've finally got finished some badges that we're going to be allocating to different people. So there's a members badge, a founder members badge. There's going to be a CPD providers badge to kind of bring things together. And one of them is a startup badge, for if someone's got an idea. We'll use your podcast as a perfect example, that they want to set out and do it, that we want to be able to link them with people who can do the graphic design, who can do the intros and outros, that kind of thing, so that you've got the tools you need to go and get it done rather than talk about it. Because we need those. In the same way, when you come in and you get qualified as an ADI, and you haven't been trained and therefore qualified as an accountant, a marketeer, an advertising expert, a social media expert, a counsellor, whatever those other skill sets are, and they're huge, an accountant, which has always been my failing, which is weird, because I spent lockdown advising people about grants, and I know the self-assessment tax return backwards now, but my family found it hysterical. There's me stood there, and I was genuinely, first lockdown, it was 16-hour days, putting stuff together, helping people. The phone didn't stop, and it was great, because I felt like I was doing something. I didn't have to focus on me. If I'd have stopped and focused on me, the world would have ended. So I got to keep myself going that way. And that understanding of all of the skills that you need, that is what a driving instructor is. So actually, we understand. It's an in-joke, if you like. We understand as an instructor, we're not just anything. Because actually, a driving instructor is just someone who is paid to sit there while the person next to them drives and learns.
Yeah.
We know that there's no real evidence to show, and this isn't saying that it's not true. There's no evidence to show that driving instructors help the process. Potentially there's evidence to show that they don't, but that study hasn't been done. So we are paid to sit there, potentially because mum and dad don't want to.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the view that I hold, but it's a perfectly reasonable one. What and I love it when I get a PDI who sits in the car and they just suddenly go, do you know what, this isn't what I thought it was about. It's a different world. It's not just about sitting there. It's not because I'm good at driving. It's not because I enjoy driving, because you're a professional passenger. You're not a driver. And you're going to sit there and you're going to support this person, and you're going to be working with their heads and their feet, and you're going to be trying to get the two to work together. And then you're running a business, because by default, we're self-employed. We're not naturally self-employed people. We're not jumping out there and setting up businesses necessarily. Some are. I have a habit of doing so. But I think we're self-employed by default, and therefore why would we have those levels of experience? So I think it's the fact that we need those different hats those different job roles, and the fact that we come from backgrounds with massive experience. It's my in-joke of just a driving instructor, because I've never met someone who is. I'm waiting to.
I think what you've just spoke about there probably sums up exactly the premise behind this podcast. There's going to be a hell of a lot of people that might listen to this and are almost angered by what you're saying there. Like, well,
Yeah.
I'm not paid to be a coach, or I'm not doing this to counsel. I'm not, and I think earlier on I mentioned going above and beyond, and that's my old mentality. It's only really the past 18 months where I've switched and I've started looking to develop myself. That used to be my mentality. And I just think it's fascinating, that resistance. And that's kind of, like I say, what this podcast is about, hoping that we can change a few of those, but more aimed at the people like I was and like I am now, that are looking to find ways to change. But I'd be intrigued to know what you would say to those people now that are essentially calling bullshit on what you're saying there.
We've probably met, and they probably already have. I welcome them and I enjoy the conversation. And do you know what? They've just proven themselves wrong, because they're open to the conversation. They're listening to the podcast. We hope they haven't hit stop. And actually, everybody knows there's more to it. It's not what you thought it was at the beginning. And I haven't got to the final page yet. I don't think it is what you think it is at the end. I think there's always the next step, but some of us take longer to take that step. For me, and going back to what the DITC has been created for, is how do you find that if it's not there for you?
Yeah.
Before you were doing this podcast, it didn't exist. So how can people find that help? How do you join the dots? We've got some brilliant associations. I've got a lot of time for the associations, and I know them all quite well. The people that are involved, and we're not trying to be an association. It's easier to say what we're not a lot of the time. So we're not an association. We're not selling CPD. It doesn't mean that we're not going to promote it, and it doesn't mean we're not going to provide it at some point. Ian and I have run CPD courses, but what we're trying to do is give people a place to find the things. So if your belief of what a driving instructor is someone who sits there like your instructor was and tells you how to do it until you get it right, and criticizes you for missing the mirror check every time, or more importantly, the blind spot check. Why do we stick to mirror signal maneuver and then say, but you didn't check your blind spot? It's not in mirror signal maneuver. Why don't we, and my preference, look, tell, do, and discuss what look is about. And look, tell, do's, I think it's awesome. Because it's limited, LTD, limited. So it's as simple as you can get. It's also learn to drive, LTD, learn to drive. Look includes the blind spot and includes the environment that you're in. So, it's about discovery. And I love it that it's about discovery. It's about, what do you need to know to make the right decision? Tell, signal means indicate. And we know that it's not about indicate, because we've got brake lights, position, reverse lights, and attitude of the car, and speed, and everything else. So it's about communicate. So make sure that you are communicating well. Even if you're doing something stupid, make sure it's really obviously stupid, because then everyone else will get out of your way. So look, tell. No one can spell maneuver. It's one of the 40 most misspelt words in the English language. I hate the word maneuver, and none of your pupils use the word maneuver except for in a driving context.
Yeah.
Do is 2 letters. I can spell 2 letters, and it's memorable. Look, tell, do. Why do we make it complicated? Let alone going to MSPSL or MSPSGL, depending if you include the G.
Yeah.
What? Who's thrown up? Someone's thrown up alphabeti spaghetti across the page and said, right, we'll make that into a driving instructor's manual because we've got enough letters as it is. Apologies, we brought along DITC and added to. But we're going with the collective a lot of the time because it's not a set of letters. But look, do. Let's keep it simple. And if what we're taught isn't what we're delivering, and if what we're delivering, learning to drive, isn't actually what the pupil is doing at the end of it, they're learning to get to their friend's house. They're learning to get a job that is better than the one they would have got otherwise. That's much bigger. So for all of those people that do call bullshit on it, I appreciate that. I really do, and I've been there, and I've realised that actually they need to find their truth for them to be able to move forward. And it might not be coaching, because coaching is a labelled product. It might just be that they want to feel that they're engaging with their pupils better.
Yeah.
Now, I might call that rapport. They don't. That's fine. I don't care. Let's get it so that they can engage with their pupils better, because we know that we get on better. And if we get on better, we get better results. I'll take that. So they're proving me right by the fact that they're listening. They are proving me right by the fact they care, and they're arguing about it. What it is our language isn't joining up. So let's find a way that it does. I hate the phrase coaching, absolutely detest it, because I don't think what we do is, and I seem to remember Bob mentioned that on your podcast, that I when I started, I was a conversational instructor, and that's what I felt I did. And then I discovered coaching, and I kind of went, oh, okay, that sort of fits in with my feeling. And then it was getting in the car and saying to your pupils, what would you like to do today? And I was like, they don't know, because I haven't communicated well with them as to what the purpose is. Why are we here? So I started doing that more. I spoke to them and I said, what are you looking for out of this? What do you think a good driver is? Because actually, let's try and achieve that. And then if we can figure out what a good driver is, what would a good driver do? What are your worries? I'm worried about stalling. Good, let's go and stall the car. Because actually it's not as scary as you think it is. Let's go and figure out what this clutch is. What is your understanding of the world, and how can we work with it, rather than me try and tell you my version of driving. And I now do the same thing with instructors. I do the same thing with my theory training, that we make so many assumptions. We go and keep doing those questions until you get the answers right isn't good enough. But the DVSA are using words that people haven't come across. Have you ever asked someone to pull up next to the telegraph pole and got a blank look? It's pull up next to the tree with no leaves and branches. Oh, that thing. They're not words that are being used by the people we're teaching. So why should they understand them? I could teach in French potentially. I don't speak French, but I'll give it a good go. There's no more reason that they should understand me than if I was teaching it in English, if I'm not using their language. So say the same for instructors, same for PDIs as well. Don't believe everything you're told. Argue with it. Ask why. If there's not a good enough why, then don't do it. But if there is a good enough why, take it on board and see what you think.
I mean, that's a really impassioned response. And I'm going to try and come back to a few points you said there. But one I'm going to mention is, this is obviously an audio podcast, but I'm going to get that clip of your expressions talking about MSPSL and put that out, because there were some interesting expressions going on there. One thing I wanted to mention was going back to right back to the beginning when we spoke about above and beyond. And again, I think that's my perception, because the perception is that, like you said, we just teach people to drive. You get in with Instructor and then you're done. So for me, above and beyond is above that. But in reality, that's substandard in a lot of ways. We should be doing what we're doing now, and that should be the norm. What you're talking about should be the norm in reality. And I think that, and again, I include my old self in this, the people teaching below that level are doing it, I think, maybe through laziness, they don't know how to do it better than that. It's a get out sometimes.
I think it's that thing of when your pupil phones you, an inquiry, they're not your pupil yet, an inquiry phones you, and they buy based on, they inquire based on the three Ps: price, pass rate, personality. Do you sound nice on the phone? Because if you don't, why would they book? Pass rate, because that's what they're trying to achieve at that moment in time. That's what they think they're trying to achieve. And price, because that is important to them. But actually what they're asking is value. And I will always sell on value. And I will always say to them, you say, I'm charging, X amount for a lesson. I won't go down the price route, but I'm charging X amount for a lesson. And I can get that for half that amount down the road. And you say, what do they include in their lessons? And it's a driving lesson, isn't it? Okay. So, a burger from McDonald's is equivalent to a burger from, I don't know, Gordon Ramsay. And are the ingredients the same? Is the process the same? And is the satisfaction you're going to get at the end of it the same? Let's compare like for like. And I think it goes for instructors and it goes for pupils. We shouldn't judge people for not seeing that value if we don't tell them what that value is.
Yeah.
Why should you know? Why should you? So it's a lack of education. It's not our fault. That sounds like a really blaming statement. You're not educated. No, you haven't been given the opportunity yet to discover otherwise. So I'll keep banging the drum. I will, in a less, on my soapbox way, we'll set up a platform where between your lesson, come and have a look at the articles that we're popping onto the website and discover how you can use a dog training technique to improve your particularly male driver's ability to not get carried away on a faster road. That is one of the articles that is on there. Came from an article that I read from a really well-known dog trainer in America. Looked at her technique and went, we can use that with drivers. So I repurposed it. How to get prices higher. A lovely driving instructor staple. But actually not saying you're not charging enough, saying, what do you think you're worth? What do you think your lesson is worth? Let's take the instructor out of the equation for a minute. What's the lesson worth? What's the value in it? And what should people be paying for that kind of product? They're probably our top two at the moment articles, for want of a better phrase. And they're both, 5-minute reads. They're not pages and pages long, because I haven't got the attention span to write a book. I've tried. I'll get to the end of the first chapter and I've given up. So, an article is what you'll get. And I don't care. I don't object if people don't like it or do like it. My ego loves it when they say it's brilliant. I won't lie. I love it when people go, do you know what? I really enjoyed that, because it makes it worthwhile. But I equally enjoy people saying I didn't like it if they tell me why. Why didn't you like it? What is it that you didn't connect with? Is it that you've never had a pupil that is adrenaline driven and and is hard to control, and they struggle to control themselves? Because I wasn't a boy racer. That wasn't me. Didn't enjoy driving, didn't like driving. But I tell you what, temper wise, when I was younger, I really struggled. And until one day when, I promise you, it was that flick of a switch, and that just changed me. And I just went, you can't live life like this. I need to change how I am. And that I just switched. I changed overnight. And when I talk to pupils in the car about it, if they have similar issues, or they feel aggression in that way, I'll chat with them about it. And they're like, but you're the most chilled back, laid back person. Nothing's bothering you. I've nearly killed us at 3 roundabouts, and you're still going, yeah, be fine, don't worry. Yeah, we'll get there. I'm here to back you up and stop it from going wrong. And that was a skill that I needed to learn. So if it's not the skill that's right for you, maybe there's something that you can discover that is.
Yeah. And, during that, you mentioned a couple of words. You mentioned a lot of words.
Sorry.
You mentioned the words blame and I think criticize or criticism. And I think they're key words, because I listen to these podcasts back, obviously, when I record them, I edit them, and I always like to listen back as well, because I find listening to you guys afterwards is like listening to it again, new for me, because I'm not involved in the conversation at that point. But I hear myself then, and at times I feel like I'm being really, really critical of our industry, what I say. And I can't even decide whether that's my intention or not sometimes, because I think there is a lot of problems within the industry, but there's also a hell of a lot of good there. So, when I sit back and I say, these people that aren't putting the effort in, they're providing a 3 out of 10 service. Well, there are people doing that. And I think that if you're offended by me saying that, you're probably someone that is providing a 3 out of 10 service. So I found that quite interesting. But in fact, that leads me to the next point. And this is going back to something you said previously. And I know you said it in jest, but about people hitting stop partway through the podcast.
We can talk about them now. They've gone.
Yeah.
They've gone. We can say what we like.
Well, I can see the data on when people stop listening. And I listened back to, you mentioned the Bob Morton coaching podcast episode. I went back and looked at that, and there's a significant drop off. I think it's about 40 minutes in. There's I can't remember percentage, but a significant drop off. I went back and listened to it. It's when he was talking about the school of mum and dad versus instructors, and talking about how we're in not the wrong, but what we can do to improve, rather than blaming the school of mum and dad. Mm-hmm. And at that point, people stopped listening. Yes. And I thought that's ridiculously telling. So, it'd be interesting to look back at this episode and see when people stop listening. I also just want to touch back on something you said there about what a look, tell, and do. Because again, I find a lot of this stuff, and I'm sure there's other instructors, when I say this stuff, I'm saying it almost as people listening rather than me, if that makes sense. Because I'm sure there's other people that feel this, well, they discover those things that you've just explained, they discover it by accident. It's like the look, tell, do thing. I think I do something similar, and it was by accident. I had a student come from another instructor. It was last year sometime, whatever that was. And she said to me, I can't remember mirror signal maneuver. I said, why are you remembering it? Why are you trying to remember it? You don't need to remember it. What are you doing in a sense? And she's like, I says, what is your mirror? What are you doing? She goes, well, I'm checking it's safe. I said, right. What's the signal aspect? Well, I'm telling people what I'm doing. Yeah. And then what are you doing after that? She goes, well, then I'm doing it. I said, right. So you're checking it's safe, telling people what you're doing, and you're doing it. And it was like, you could just see this, flash of realization come across the face. Yeah. No problem. And I've tried to incorporate that more since, and that was an accidental discovery. So I found it really interesting that you were talking about that. Before we move on to the ITC proper, I do just want to touch on your group, because I know that you had one of, if not the first Facebook group for instructors.
It was the first. I'm putting claim to that, definitely.
I mean, look, there are other places you've spoken about that, so I don't want to go into too much detail on that, but I'm intrigued to know what initial, if any, problems you found with that.
2 words. The problems were driving instructors. Interestingly, it was communication. It was taking people who should, and I'm not convinced that everyone does, but should be good at communicating, and putting them into the written word. Humor, sarcasm does not translate well in writing. And I got a reputation, because this was before my face was, was as known as it has been, because I hadn't really discovered things like the conferences that go on, and so I was just a Facebook name on a screen. I think it was a PDI as well at the time, but I've always liked to think big of myself. What I was writing, I had this image of being 60 plus and having no sense of humour. And I love a laugh and a joke. I just identified that in communicating in text form on Facebook, the second you try to be funny, and I've made the mistake myself, but the second you try to be funny or sarcastic, it doesn't translate. So the issues were personality clashes because people read what they wanted to, they heard what they wanted to, and we're self-employed, we're our own bosses. They don't like being told off, in inverted commas. So you've got to have a set of rules, which you would think instructors like, because we've got the highway code, we like our rules. This is how we work. We work inside a system that we understand and works. They don't like that when it's someone else's rules. And people don't like being challenged because we're gods of our own cars. So, that instructor mindset, and this was pre-coaching as well. So I think coaching has actually softened that a little bit.
Yeah. People
are happier to have a debate or a discussion, more importantly, a discussion. Then it was an argument. It was me versus you. So we work through that. And what is notable, and it's not just me that says it, my admin team, Carol, Thomas, and Johnny, and we had Mike previously as well, who's not in the industry anymore. But they've been awesome. Don't get paid for it. That's the other thing. We don't get paid to do it. It's as if you're doing a paid job so people can abuse you, but you're not. It's all voluntary. And the number of hours, and it was always on a night, the one night out with my other half, it'd all kick off. And I'd be sitting there trying to resolve an issue. She's a godsend because she's put up with me for, doing all that. But the balance, social media is 24/7. What we've seen time and time again, our group has survived when others haven't. And we haven't had as much inviting, and we've actually worked through and found solutions to 100%. 100% is about communication. It's about how you word things. It's not about what you say. You can be absolutely vile towards somebody as long as you say it in a way that is clear, concise, and they can understand. And they'll choose not to like you, but they won't necessarily cut you off. Because as long as you've made your position clear, then they will understand it. So everything is about communication. And I remember when my now 10-year-old came along, and driving instructors stepped up. Instructors I didn't know got in touch and said, do you need any tests covered? That was my first real insight into how awesome the community is. But we had a naming ceremony for him where family and friends came round, and it was kind of what one thing would you like him to have through his life? And I said, good communication, because with that, you can solve anything. It really comes down to the ability for us to interact and get on. And that for me is where social media goes wrong, because Instagram, people are communicating something that is not true. It is a chosen snapshot of their life. It's not reality. Facebook is very often in words. Twitter as well is anyone that can describe their life in 140 characters is better than I am at communicating. I've never figured out haikus, but it's that ability to communicate is key. And every single problem there's been on Facebook has been because of a lack of communication. I often quote an instructor who is no longer with us, Liz Sheridan, who she hated me, absolutely hated me. But I reached out and I said, look, I get it. We don't have to like each other, but let's let's have a dialogue. And we ended up being really good mates behind the scenes. You know, she'd send me a screenshot and go, "Oh, look, they're talking about you," or, you know, because she knew that I had a sense of humor about it. And we did that by good communication. And, you know, there's lots of instructors who hated me to begin with, and we've actually found a really good working relationship, and that they'll get in touch and say that you'll be interested in this, or I'd like to know your take because it'll be different from mine. Yeah.
Did you ever find, 'cause like you say, there's been talked about, there's been sort of abuse thrown your way, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time you found yourself holding back, or did you always just fit? Were you able to almost shrug that off, or did it ever affect you? Or
yeah, I definitely get it when it winds me up. I've learned not to hit send. There's a lot of, like, you know, massive amounts of messages that I've written and not sent. That's always been my thing, is, you know, take a step back, read it, and then decide if you want to send it. Do not put anything in writing that you wouldn't stand up and say in court. And remember that humour doesn't work. Even though you think you've written it really well, somebody will misunderstand. And I still fall into that trap. I love a joke, or, you know, just pointing things out to someone about the way they've written something. It's just not the way they read it. So yeah, I think, yeah, so often I've done it and I've bitten, but what I've also done is apologized afterwards and said, you know what, I shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have responded that way, which again is good communication, isn't it? We're all allowed to make dicks of ourselves at some point. We've all done it. You know, that's all fair enough. It's then what you do after that. You know, it's about managing that relationship, and we do that in the car. We do that between each other. Waving to other instructors, that's worse than having a go at me on Facebook. Is when, you know, and I appreciate if you're doing an emergency stop, don't do that. I get it. I just assume people are doing that, or they're busy doing other things, so I don't take it personally. But, you know, the one instructor that never waves to anybody. I'm just like, do you know what? We're all in the same. Well, what is it? The COVID was we're all in different boats, but in the same ocean. But, you know, we're all in the same mess together. Let's at least just share a bit of a knowing look. I was thinking it's the same as when I see another bloke sat outside the women's changing rooms in a shop. You know, while they're busy trying the clothes on or such. And you see that look between the two of you, kind of going, yeah, I've been here for an hour as well, and I've had enough. And we both know we're going to go back to that first outfit in the first shop, and that's the one that's going to get bought. And it's just those knowing looks. And there's plenty of other examples. That's just one of mine. But it is, yeah, those knowing looks. And I just think we can share that as an instructor. The in jokes.
Yeah. That's where masks are harder at the minute. It's harder to the face covered. So yes, I'm one for nodding. I'm very much a nodder. If I feel that a wave is appropriate, I'll wave. But, you know, if you've got a particularly nervous student, sometimes I won't. So I'll nod. But like now, it's like, I don't feel like this is noticeable. So yeah.
Yes. The Adrienne Carter, who is the face whisperer. I don't know if you've come across her.
No.
She's well worth checking out. It's got a really good relationship with instructors, and I went on her course for face reading. It's based on the TV series Lie to Me was based on Paul Ekman's work, looking at micro expressions in faces, which are universal. And she's like the UK version, a version of the guy in Lie to Me. And it's fascinating, but it's one of the best courses I've been on, which really helped with my instructing and my life and everything else, but was nothing to do with being an instructor. And it wasn't about reading my pupils' faces. It was actually accurately assessing the person who's come the other way. When my pupil went, yeah, that was fine. And I went, that person was angry. There was actual anger showing on their face. So, you know, that's the response that you've caused. And being able to assess. And when someone comes towards you telling, you know, are they angry? Are they upset? Are they do they find it funny? That's really helped. The mask, as you say, has caused a massive barrier. She's got a PDF that sort of shows, how you can read people with just their eyes.
Yeah.
Well worth a look. And something I ought to get on the DITC site, actually. But yes, I'll have to get that one up there.
Speaking of DITC, which is the Driver, Instructor and Trainers Collective.
Yes.
Yes.
Close enough anyway. Yeah.
I'll take that. I'm going to open this up a little bit very broad. Talk to me about it. Tell me what it is. Tell me what the purpose is. Tell me how it started. I know we've dipped in and out, sort of specifically around it.
When you come into the industry, we've invented something that we're calling pre-PDIs. They've always existed. We've just given them a label because when you're looking to become a driving instructor, it's really hard to find something that isn't sales patter or possibly, DVSA fact. But that's just the minimum standards as we've established and the criteria for passing. They don't tell, the DVSA don't, because it's not their job and I don't expect them to. They don't tell you how to do the job. They don't tell you that actually, yes, you need to be able to deliver instruction, whatever that means, but they don't say, and you need to be able to market yourself, and you need to be able to, you need to be able to work with people on stuff that isn't necessarily driving because it will affect their driving. Some of the stuff's touched on in the DVSA book, Better Drivers. As Better Driver Training, we did object slightly to the name, but in that book they talk about the human factors. It doesn't get covered in the information that's put out there. So, and you get promised the earth, work the hours that you want, laughable. Earn 30 to 40,000 pounds a year. It's not impossible, but good luck getting there. Especially when you first start out, and all of these things that are real sales patter challenges. How do you find the truth behind it? And now you can't even say to a local instructor, "Can I come and shadow a couple of lessons?" Because that's difficult. Not impossible, but difficult.
Yeah.
So trying to find that out, and then we all get biased, and we all hate what went wrong for us. So you get a lot of independents that, if you mention a national franchise, they're all evil.
Yeah.
It's not. As long as you know what you're going into. Read the contract is my biggest thing. People don't. It's that thing of when you get an app or a bit of software and it says, please read the terms, and you just click accept. We do that. And we're a business, we can't afford to do that. But the same with pupils. We work on trust. It's all right until it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And COVID's seen a lot of going wrong with contracts and franchises and situations and cars and all sorts. So we were very aware that it's a badge of honor. If you haven't made that mistake or one of those mistakes, you're not a driving instructor. We laugh about it. Again, it's in jokes, but actually we should have a platform so that we can find information, we can discover what's really out there, we can find the tools that are going to benefit us, and we know where to go. And it's not necessarily going to be the place with the answer. It'll be the place with the signpost to the answer, or it will join the dots, the industry middleman. So that's largely what the DITC is. There's the website, which is free access. Might get a members area. There's one set up by a driving instructor who has made our website because that's what he also does. We're keen on engaging with industry expertise from outside of the industry as well, and we're working with all of those things. There is, as there's the members level as well. So what we're also offering is a subscription, keeping it really cheap, £6 a month. And one of the first and big success stories was that we negotiated with Totem, who used to be NUS Extra, but basically it's a student card, because that's the language that people understand. We don't care what it's called, it's a student card, to get discount, to recognise professional learning. That as a driving instructor on your lesson, you are continuously learning what works and what doesn't. As we said earlier, it's not failure, it's learning.
Yeah.
And instructors are doing that constantly. And to meet their criteria, we've explained that process, and they have accepted that process, that as long as you're reflecting for 2.5 hours worth of lessons, not for 2.5 hours, but for 2.5 hours worth of lessons a week, you meet the criteria to be a professional learner. Instructors are doing that for far more. PDIs are definitely doing it. So you can get a student card as part of the membership, and we're saving more than it's costing to be a member on sort of almost a monthly basis with the savings that are available. And we want to do more of that. So there's going to be savings and benefits for the membership. And there's going to be exclusive stuff coming through. We had a brilliant meeting this morning with a company that have an app that we're going to be putting out in the next probably couple of weeks once we've sorted out the small print of opportunities. We might have achieved my holy grail, which is a free cup of coffee every week for driving instructors, or tea, or hot chocolate, or whatever you want, but or vegan, whatever the alternative is. Sorry, know your market. That's important. So offering support and benefits, offering opportunities as well. We want to represent what the industry is there. To quote another NLP presupposition, the map is not the territory, which is something that took me a long time to understand. But how you see things and how I see things are our perspectives, but they are not necessarily what is actually there. It's our perspective of what's there. So the industry hasn't got a map. They've got how individual instructors see it, and how it is sold to us through a lens, but we haven't got a map. We haven't got a place we can go to and go, right, this is this, this is this. This is the company or companies that provide diary, alternatives to a paper diary, digital alternatives. We haven't got associations, go to. The NASP are the one that are pushed, but there are others. And if you don't know what is there, how can you choose what's best for you? I have a 10-year-old who doesn't like eating, trying new foods, but he has just discovered curry, and I now accept that I don't need to get a DNA test done. But he is he was born on curry as well, because both my other half and I are big curry fans. But if he doesn't try it, how's he ever going to know if he likes it? So it's not I don't like that or I don't need that. It's let's go and discover what it's about. And for me, that's what we're trying to create. Whether it will be exactly that in a year's time, I don't know, because what we want to do is to represent the industry, and we're not the industry. We're just Ian and myself, just two people inside of it. The more members we get, the more we can listen, and we can introduce things that are going to be of use to people. But what we're trying to do is not to be an association. We love associations. We think all instructors should be a member of at least one, because they are a way of connecting. But we want to deliver that opportunity to engage and be an open door.
I recently started using something called Linktree. And for those that don't know, it's just something where you put everything of yours. So, for example, all my podcasts are on there, and it's got all links for Apple, Spotify, Google, all that. So you click on the Linktree and then pick whatever one you want. It feels to me like the DITC is like Linktree with more detail. There's a bit of that there.
I'll take that. Yeah. I know Linktree because my other half is TikTok famous. and Linktree is very big on TikTok, because you've got one line to say how to contact you. This is my YouTube, or this is my Twitter or Instagram, and we all know we have multiple contact points. So Linktree is a really good way of saying, right, here's my contact to my multiple contact points. And what I love, and I'm a big, this week I've become a big believer in this going forwards, is that all instructors should have that, all driving schools should have that, all associations should have that, and I think we're gonna advocate that, because then you can manage your links. If you stop engaging with Facebook, you can take Facebook off of that, so you don't miss those opportunities, but you give people other ones. If you find a new platform and they don't always work out, you can add those as well. So yes, I think that's a lovely way of describing it, and it is, hopefully we're also bringing some flavour to it as well, of the different areas, so people will discover new opportunities through that. But I think having that, the signposting to other places is definitely what we'd like to do. Have you discovered what 3 words?
No.
So what 3 words? They've divided the whole world up into I think they're 3 meter squares, but into squares, and each location has 3 words that is an exact reference for that place. So your front doorstep will have 3 words associated with it. Unfortunately, they took all the funny ones out, because I was desperate to find something thoroughly inappropriate to use as my examples on my write-up. But I think as an instructor, what 3 words is a brilliant tool, because if you've got pupils that live in the middle of nowhere, they know no one can find their house, but they don't bother telling you. Why? So if we all have on our Linktree this is my what 3 words for the location that I'm gonna, that I meet people at in a particular place, or and you have what 3 words for your pupils, that you can type it in and it will take you straight to that place.
Right.
And it's being used more and more. So I think there's another one there. It's not quite the same for us because we're roaming, we're all over the place. But when you're trying to find someone, or if you're arranging to meet someone at the local shopping centre, you can give them a very specific point to go, and I will meet you at the Cone Duck Donkey. So they know exactly where you're at, and if you're saying to them, I'm by the exit and there's 3 exits, we can avoid those problems. So that's where I'm meeting you. So worth a look.
Yeah, I'll give that one a nosy. At the moment, the people that I'm getting on this podcast are people that I endorse, or that I've used, or that I believe in, or showcasing something that I'm an advocate of. Going forward, I may change that and have some fun and get some people that I completely disagree with. At the minute, it's about things I endorse, and I sort of accidentally stumbled across the DITC, and I was mightily impressed by it. Mightily impressed with everything you've just said. I feel that, like you said, I think you used the word signpost, and I feel that that's the one. If I'm just talking Facebook group for a second, that's, if now I had a question of I wanted to find something, yours is the place I would go. And it sounds like that's the goal you were aiming for above everything else. So yeah, I would recommend to anyone that at the very least that they check it out. But there's 2 things that you said there to me that I think are game changers. I really do. And again, that's almost getting into the tagline of this podcast again, the game changers. But I think that totem card, the idea that you've managed to get this, I just find that bonkers. You're 100% right in what you're saying. We are learning, we are students, we are developing all the time, but I would never have put that 2 and 2 together. That 2 and 2 to me makes 47. That I don't get that. But I think the fact you've done that is phenomenal. And also the idea of pre-PDIs. I love that term. I really do. And Just touching back on that for a second, we spoke before about above and beyond not being accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Our standards should be higher. Then if you want to go above and beyond that, that's a different scenario. Pre-PDIs, is that the opportunity to instill that? So that you're coming into the industry with this, no, these aren't our standards. No one can see this, I'm raising my hands. These aren't our standards. These are our standards. I think that's the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I think it's the same with learners as well. That, you know, what we'd love to be able to do is to get into schools and deliver some kind of understanding of the process of learning to drive. You know, to work with those with people as they come through. You know, starting with, you know, education of driving around with kids in the car. The same thing goes for coming into the industry. You know, people are coming into the industry because they want to. How many of those people then say to you, "Oh yeah, I've been thinking about this for years. I've looked at it a few times." We want to get them then, not when they phone me up, and you know, has happened numerous times during the last year, particularly, where they phone up and they say, "I've signed a contract with XYZ. I'm hoping there isn't an XYZ. If so, just a random title, I promise. You never know in this industry, do you? But I've signed a contract with these people, and it's not what I thought it was going to be. Or I've now realised that I'm trapped in a contract that even if I fail, and, you know, by not passing that part three times, the training provider hasn't got me to the standard that they promised they would get me to. If I fail that part 3, I've still got to pay the franchise for the next 3 years, because that's the contract that I've signed. Firstly, no, you shouldn't have signed that contract.
Yeah.
Yes, you should have read that contract, but we've all been there. You know, if we can get in before they've signed and say, these are the questions to be asking, these are the potential pitfalls, these are the things, the ingredients you need to know to decide whether you're going to like it or not. You know, they're the ones that are going to work for you possibly, but wouldn't work for someone else, or vice versa. And, you know, national franchises can be amazing for some instructors. They deliver exactly what they need. Awesome. You know, all for it. If it's with a franchise that is capping your earnings, and you are not able to get the best out of that for you as an individual, and therefore you're not delivering the best for your pupils because you're working yourself ragged, you know, work smarter, not harder. I'm inherently lazy. People always go, how do you get so much done? I've got a really short attention span with things, so I like bits. I like bits of stuff, because then it keeps me interested, and the job does that for me. And I like finding easier ways to do things, which involves hard work, but it gets better as it goes along. And, you know, yeah, if we can get into people at that point and say, yeah, there are opportunities, there are things to look out for, but we'll be honest, it's not all roses, then what better time to get them on board? And that benefits instructors because the quality goes up, it benefits pupils, it benefits trainers, especially the independent trainers, the individual ones out there who are fighting against the mass marketing machines of, you know, of the likes of Red, AA, BSM, Bill Plant, who, if you Google, they're the ones that come up at the top.
Yeah.
It's really hard for us as 2 audit trainers who are delivering, you know, really bespoke and one-to-one PDI training that is designed at creating a driving instructor and not just passing a test, to get that conversation to say, have you considered whether you want a training scheme that continues after your part 3, that supports you as an instructor? Whether you go independent or whether you come with a driving school, doesn't matter. We'll mentor you through the process. So you've got someone you can pick up the phone to. You know, and that's the other side of what we want the DITC to be. You've got someone you can pick up the phone to. You know, if it's me, I don't always know the answer, but I hopefully know someone who does.
I love that ethos. And then just to sort of tie a bow on the DITC, if you could set an end goal, is there an end goal in mind, or is it open? Let's see what happens. If you could take it anywhere, where would you take it?
Ian would say world domination, but that's just because he made the Lego Death Star at Christmas, or his birthday, one or the other. But I think what I want is for the industry to be working for instructors and pupils to achieve life goals and life skills, so that we're moving away from minimum standards.
Yeah.
So it's about the maximizing. It's that reach for the stars, and you might reach the moon, rather than go, what's the bare minimum that I need to get away with? I dread the day that they bring in a minimum number of hours or a set amount of money for a lesson, because actually you're capping things. We never achieved anything by saying we'll do the minimum. By putting a cap on things. I love the fact everybody does it differently. I don't want everybody to be the same, but I want us to be able to embrace the fact that everybody does it differently.
Cool. Now, in your group, I asked if anyone had any questions for you. Now, there were some interesting ones, but I've taken up a lot of your time already, so I'm only going to ask one.
Okay.
What 3 words will you use to describe Ian Brett?
Oh, that's really, really difficult.
Are they the 3 words? Really, really difficult.
He is. That would be perfect. But I think it's 4. I'm trying to get it down to 3. It's not quite good English, but that'll work. My total opposite.
Right.
And because of that, that's why we work so well, because we find a happy medium. We challenge each other, and we do that and get on quite well. I married him, so I
married to him, or married him and someone else.
I married him and someone else.
Right,
but a lot of people thought we were going to marry each other. So we thought we'd at least proven half right. And I got to along with the bride's sister, we got to host the ceremony and do all of that, which was great. It was good fun and lovely to be part of. But there's even a picture of me cutting the cake with him, I think. I think my total opposite.
Cool.
And I say that with a hint of respect, but I won't admit that.
The last question then: if you're leaving this episode now, what one piece of advice, what one tip, what words of wisdom would you leave for instructors or PDIs now?
I'll go with 2 things. The first one is read the contract before you sign it, because I think that solves a lot of problems in our industry. And the other one is be open to change.
Cool. Awesome. And I think wise words there on both parts with those ones. Right, so where can people find you? I will put all your details in the show notes, so if anyone's listening and wants to go check them, then there'll be links as well, so I can go straight to you. But where can people find you, and where can they find the DITC, and is there anything else you want to promote?
I haven't yet got the link tree sorted, so I can't use that. But for finding me personally, Facebook is always a good one. But Google me and I come up somewhere. But the DITC is the best place for people to go as instructors. So it's the DITC, all as one word, .co.uk, and you can get us for everything else through there. So that's the hub. That's the whole point. So go there and you'll find the other places if you need to.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm sure you all enjoyed that one. Chris is not one who's frightened to give his opinion. So it's always good to listen to what he's got to say because he's not going to mince his words. I like his approach. He's taught me a few things today about maybe things I was a little bit scared to do on lessons, but now I'm just going to fully commit to doing. It's giving me a little bit more self-belief talking to him, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit more self-belief just listening to him. As always, if you've got any feedback, be sure to get in touch with either me or Chris. All the contact notes are in the show notes there. You can just head over and click the link to get in touch with us. If you're enjoying the episodes, if you're listening anywhere like Apple, make sure you leave us a nice little 5-star review and maybe even some glowing words of praise. So yeah, I wish you all a very good week and stay safe. So thank you for listening today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you click subscribe wherever you're listening so that the next one will drop straight into your podcast feed. If you want to get in touch with the show, head over to tcdrive.co.uk. You can get in touch with me by any method over there. And remember, let's just keep raising standards and stay safe.